While Don Corleone's assertion in the opening scene of The Godfather that we're not murderers may sound hypocritical, the truth is that there was logic behind his seemingly contradictory statement. In a movie filled with calculated killings, it's interesting to see the mental gymnastics that mafia men play to justify their questionable morality. The Godfather featured its fair share of murders, which might make Marlon Brando's Don Corleone look like a total liar after he uttered this statement to his consigliere Tom Hagen, while we even saw the Don carry out murders himself in The Godfather Part 2. In this scene, he refused the Undertaker Amerigo Bonasera's request for vengeance against the two young men who assaulted his daughter. Although the Corleone name was practically synonymous with organized killings, it's only with an understanding of Don Vito's flawed psychology that we realize he sincerely does not believe he or his family are murderers. Don Vito lives his life by his own moral code. Don Corleone denied Bonasera's request for good reason, and that's because he sees killing and murder as two totally different things. For the Don, killing someone is about carrying out business, and those who are in the mafia game should know the deadly consequences of a life in organized crime. However, to end the life of another person for personal reasons does not justify murder in his eyes. While Bonasera came to the Don begging for justice, the Don felt that because Bonasera's daughter was still alive, murdering the two young men would not equate to fair treatment. As a gangster who built himself up from nothing after emigrating from Sicily to the United States, although Don Vito may not live his life by the letter of the law, he still acted under his own personal code of justice. Bonasera was driven by anger and hatred against his daughter's American boyfriend, Kevin Moonen, and his college buddy, Jerry Wagner, who attempted and failed to rape her. While Bonasera asked for the Don to let them suffer then as she suffers, the Don saw this as vengeance and not justice. Don Corleone was even offended by Bonasera's request, leading to the famous quote,
"You said you come into my house on the day my daughter's to be married and you asked me to do murder. Money."
Don Corleone felt disrespected by this request, especially considering that Bonasera was previously unwilling to accept the Don's friendship as he did not want to be associated with organized crime. While Bonasera had previously acted like he was more morally upright than the mafia, he showed his true colors when he asked the Don to break his code of ethics for personal revenge. One must understand that Vito Corleone doesn't actually order many deaths in The Godfather, and there's a warped sense of logic to all of the Don's killings. Don Vito's sincere belief that he's not a murderer and merely carrying out business as necessary was supported by the fact that he's not involved with many of the deaths in The Godfather and serves a more diplomatic role as head of the Corleone family. The most violent acts in The Godfather, such as the horse's head, the Sollozzo hit, and the baptism massacre, were all carried out by others. In the end, it was Vito's most straight-laced son, Michael, who embraced his darker side and became more ruthless and volatile than the Don ever was. While the Godfather movies explored the cyclical nature of violence and the destructive impact of organized crime, Vito's actions have always been driven by balance and control. The rare killings that he does oversee, like Fanucci and Don Ciccio in Godfather Part 2, were calculated and measured acts of business that were framed as simply necessary. The Godfather's Don Corleone lived his life in a way that saw him doing everything he could to never step over an invisible line that he had constructed for himself, which, had he ever crossed it, would have turned his killings into murders.